Sashi Pugi Jishin Metokchan Riyaun Shin Degam Padi Sangre Shindir Mite Vivargi Drokin Nanda Shinla Chipasho Hidam Guru Ratnamandalakam Ninyatayani Sangye Jidang Zohi Jognamna Jamchu Vardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Jenyengi Pezanamgi Drola Benjir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Jidam Zogi Jognamdam Jamchu Bardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Jinyangi Pezonamki Drola Benjir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Jidam Zogi Jognamdam Jamchu Bardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Chinyengi Pezonamki Drola Benjir Sangye Druparsho.
So please sit comfortably with your spine straight. Take a moment to check in and go inside. Try to calm things down. Be aware of your breathing, the sensation of the air at the tips of your nostrils. Use your awareness of your breath to become more still, and calm, focused. Count your breathing for 7 rounds, 1 exhalation, 1 inhalation, 1 round. If your mind is distracted by thoughts, start over. Bring a holy being to your mind. You can think of them or visualize them or feel them. Ask them to be present with you here. To manifest. You can acknowledge them by bowing or prostrating in your mind. Offering beautiful outer objects to them. Offering your inner goodness to them. Offer your aspiration to end all of your negativity, your efforts to restrain yourself from negativity. Ask their blessing and guidance to help you do this. Try to really connect with them from your heart to make requests to be guided and blessed to achieve your highest spiritual goals. Ask them to always remain with you. Close at hand. And feel them drawing closer, joining you. You can see them in the space above your head if you like. You can feel their blessings pouring forth upon you. Entering you, filling you. With their goodness and purity. And their vibration. Their love and compassion. And try to feel it all entering you. So, blessings upon us. Thank you, holy beings, for coming here and everywhere. Anyone not finished with a quiz or needing a quiz? Yeah?
I was looking for quizzes.
Thank you.
Anyone else for quiz?
Actually, adjourn to it later. Let's see if the lights go. Yeah. Actually, not.
The, and there's another switch just behind you. That'd be great. Yeah, would be help.
No, Michael doesn't.
That works?
Don't do it. Don't
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it. Rejection from the.
How's that?
That's much better.
I can see. Thank you.
okay?
That's fine. Yeah, thanks. Welcome to class 8. It's a little hairy. These have been hard classes and continue to be hard for a little while longer, but very profound, very important information. Gyaltsab J has spent time proving the emptiness of the body and the parts of the body, and proving the emptiness of the mind and the parts of the mind thus far, right? We said, thank you. Yeah. We said that the emptiness of the body is fairly self-evident. It's not hard to understand that we've got a hand and an arm and a leg and all those things together get conceptualized as a whole thing, right? And that's how the body exists. The idea is the body exists. Mind is also not so hard to understand. We can get the idea that there's this instant of awareness, these instants of awareness, which we consider to be discrete, self-existent moments in time, and that we think and we have the idea that the recollection or the memory of all of these instants of memory and awareness strung together over a lifetime is what our mind is, are our mind. That they comprise our mind, right? So that's also not so hard, right? Unfortunately, each of those moments can also be split. Every instant of awareness and experience can be broken down into smaller pieces, right? It can be split again, and it can be split again, and it can be split again, so that we just have the raw data, right? There is no beginning to any moment, there is no duration to any moment, and there is no end to any moment, right? It can always be further subdivided. So, we're having a projection onto parts or data, which we're calling our mind, right? So we have all these bits of awareness and countless perceptual moments, which we're calling our mind, right? And for most of us, it's, some good, some bad, mostly lousy. Good days, bad days, right? If we have better karma, then we have a better life. But if we have really good karma, then we have a different perception of our mind. Think about how we're perceiving our mind right now. Our awareness of ourselves, our valid perception of our mind, is forced upon us by our past karma, right? My karma is forcing me to see a moment of the past, followed by another moment of the present, followed by another moment of the present, right? We have these instants which are strung together in linear time, in sequence, right? And a chronology, right? From when I was born up until today, right? But those are perceptions forced upon me by my past karma. I don't have to perceive my mind that way, right? And so if I had much better karma, along the lines of what an enlightened being has, I would have collected the karma to perceive my mind as omniscient. I would have collected the karma to perceive my mind not having linear time, not perceiving the past back then and the future yet to come and the present occurring in a flash right now. I would have collected the karma to perceive every instant of everything simultaneously, right? So even an omniscient being, in the nature of their perception and the nature of their mind, is a perception forced upon them by past karma, right? They simply have collected the karma to have a different perception of their mind and a different perception of reality, not past, present, and future separated along a timeline, right? But all occurring instantaneously and simultaneously. And instead of a perception of this moment, little tiny this moment right here, perception of everything simultaneously, right? So if we collect the karma, then we'll have a very different experience of our mind, right? And that's the idea of enlightenment and omniscience and how that comes about. It's not some mysterious thing, perhaps. It's something which is caused. It's a projection forced upon us by our past karma, right? And it's the collection of wisdom and the collection of merit which will yield those results and yield those perceptions, right? So, Gyaltsab in the commentary talks about the nature of the mind and the self-existence or lack of self-existence of the mind. And he says, basically, if you want to understand the relationship of the mind to those instances of awareness, if you want to understand the lack of self-existence of the mind, he says, use that 7-step analysis by Nagarjuna, Arya Nagarjuna. And the 7-step analysis is basically 7 different ways which we go through looking at something to see if it's self-existent or not. Is it self-existent in this way? Yes or no? Is it self-existent in that way? Yes or no? Is it self-existent in these 7 different ways? Yes or no? And so they use a cart. So please say Shingta, Chepadun. Shing means wooden, ta means cart, horse. A wooden horse or wagon means a cart. And Chepa means analysis, doing is 7 steps. So we don't need to use a cart because we have cars, motorcycles. Pick what pick your choice. The cart was their conveyance and was the common thing to use. So you could say, 7-step analysis of a car or anything. It doesn't matter. Just something which is convenient and comfortable, right?
Can we use a convertible?
Yeah. What color?
Red.
Red? Okay.
Yeah.
2-door.
Sorry.
It's going to be a late class anyway, so I'm just going to let you guys, do your thing, okay? It's a long class. I got a cup of tea, I'm going to relax.
It's a long class.
I'm trying to finish on time. So the idea here, this is analogous to analyzing the mind. So Gyaltsab is saying, look, if you want to analyze the mind and its emptiness, analyze a car and its emptiness, and it's parallel. It's the same idea. So if you analyze these 7 steps for something easy, like an object, and understand that, then you can apply the same reasoning to your mind. And so, using the one as an easy substitute for the other, essentially. We can try to make it a little easier to understand. Okay. So, what is the relationship of mind to moments of consciousness? And what are the moments of consciousness for the mind? What are we calling those? You have all these moments of consciousness. They're the parts of the mind, right? We're saying that the body has parts, obvious. The mind has parts. We're saying the mind exists in dependence upon its parts. What are the parts of the mind? The parts of the mind are the moments of awareness, the moments of consciousness, right? I'm saying that my mind is made up of all these bits, all these slices of perception, moments of awareness and moments of consciousness, and that's what my mind is, and it's made up of those increments or those parts or whatever you want to call it, right? Okay. So that's what we're looking at, and the analogy would be what is the relationship of a car to its parts? I mean, that's the outer object, which is an easy parallel, right? So we do the car. So can you find a mind really in these self-existent moments of consciousness, right? So that's what we have to look at. How many self-existent moments of consciousness are there in an instant?
Many. Let's say 64, 65.
Trick question. How many self-existent moments of consciousness are there? None, thank you very much. They don't exist. There is no such thing. There are no self-existent moments of consciousness. There are no self-existent moments of awareness. They don't exist. Right? A moment of awareness is an idea. It's a concept. There is no moment. There is no beginning. There is no abiding. There is no ending in any moment. Right? There is no moment. A moment doesn't exist from its own side. Right? Okay. Just want to establish that at the beginning here before we move on to the trickier things. Okay. So this analysis is based on something which never existed, just like that. All right. So it starts off with, please say, denida.
Denida.
De is those, ni is themselves, and dan is and. So here we go. Is the car equal to the individual parts? So what makes up a car? The wheels, the door, the windshield, the convertible top, the red paint. Right. So is the car equal is the car equivalent to each of the parts?
Can you find the car in parts?
Individually. So you got a door and you got a wheel. Is there a car on the door? Is there a car on the wheel? Is there a car on the paint shop? You'd have a lot of cars there, right? I mean, so no, obviously not. It's kind of self-evident and obvious. But we have to analyze all the different permutations of what's there and where might the car exist. Like, where is the car coming from? Does the car exist? And if so, where does it exist? Like, where is the car residing? Is it residing in the left wheel? Or how is it, where's this car thing? How do we find this car thing? Where is it located, right? So this is what we're analyzing. Okay.
I frequently hear people talk about car-ness.
Yeah.
And this would be a great place for people to grasp the understanding.
The ness.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No. This progression will be great. Because in shorthand, when people talk about the ness, like,
slight digression. I mean, Chi we did in course 6. There's the idea of a car, the car ness. So each of which is a slightly different concept, right? When we say car, it's a concept. When we say a car, it's a singular, So we have a broad concept and we have a singular example of a broad concept, right? So where does the broad concept come from? We have a category of car. Where did this notion of the category of thing called car come from? It didn't just exist from itself. It didn't just pop up. They used to have cars, Anyway, so when you talk about car-ness, it's kind of the identity, the nature, the
self-imposed label.
Whatever you want to call it. So the car, where did the car category come from, right? Where did the original idea and concept of car come from? Because they didn't used to exist, obviously, 100 years ago, whatever it was. So car popped into existence somewhere along the way.
Who called it a car for the first time?
Well, there was probably a guy.
We'll call that a car.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, number one, cross that off. Okay, car does not exist in each of the individual parts, and similarly, the mind. Right. So we can say each of those moments of awareness, the mind does not reside in all of those individually. Like, if I had a mind in every memory that I had a lot of minds going on, right? So the mind is not existing that way there. Right? Okay. So number 2, please say sheni.
Sheni.
Dam.
Dam.
Sheni means something other than. Something other than. Okay? So, something other than the parts themselves. So, if we talk about the car, you got the wheel, the door, etc. Does the car exist in something other than all those parts? Like, is it somehow floating around the parts? Is it somehow 3 feet off the parts? Or somehow, I don't know, this other thing which is attached to the parts but not the parts? What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to be a car that's totally unrelated to the parts. You see, it'd be like, here's this thing over here, and this is the car. It's a car key at least. And like here's this car here, which is separate, and it somehow they get stuck together. And this becomes the car key because somehow the car key is over here, and it's now stuck on the car key. It's a separate thing from the parts of the car key that becomes the car key, right? Is it that? This like just this thing that floats around and all of a sudden goes, it's now a car key. Or not, it's a car key because it's beside it or something like that, right? No, probably not, right? It's not where the car key comes from. It's not because there's some self-existent thing like in the ether floating around that attaches onto it and makes it the car key or the car, right? And so similarly the mind, right? I mean, is there something? And so here we go. Now we're like, ooh, the soul, the spirit, the ethereal, vague, fuzzy idea of what there's a mind floating around here somewhere, right? It somehow gloms on and there's a mind, right? So Arya Nagarjuna is saying, no, that's not very logical. Okay, it doesn't really hold water. It's like, never mind, cross it off. So it would have to be this unchanging thing which is divorced from the parts, which somehow associates with it, right? I mean, it's like this thing that's just floating around that's always the car, that associates with the parts and makes it the car. So it doesn't really make much sense. Right. So it would have to be somehow divorced from it, right? And then similarly, you could take away the wheels, and this thing, if this thing were still sort of associated with the parts, it would still be a car, right? And then how many of the parts would you take away before this thing which is there, which is the car, disappears, and all of a sudden it's not a car anymore, right? So that's not very logical. So scratch number 2. This is easy. All right. So then Arya Nagarjuna throws out 2 more possibilities. Please say tendam, tempe chokdam.
Tempe chokdam.
So in philosophy, there's this idea of something which is supported and something which is supporting. So like this is underneath this is supporting this, right? So this is a supporting object and this is a supported object, all right? Well, they have to be 2 separate objects necessarily for one object to support the other, right? So he uses that angle of analysis relative to the car, okay? So, he's saying, is the car dependent upon its parts? Is the car supported by its parts? All right? So, is it somehow, like if this is the car, and this is the parts, is the car somehow resting on the parts?
Wait, what do you mean?
Think of car, right? Think of car. We're trying to see, does car exist, and where does it exist, and where does it reside, and how does it relate to its parts, right? So how is car and the car parts, how are they connected? How do they relate to each other, right? So he's looking at all the different possible ways that the car and the car parts can be connected to each other. And so as a philosopher and a logician, he's saying, well, let's see, there are 8 different ways that you can associate car and car parts. And so he's going through 7 different ways in this case. So he's going through those 7 different ways that you can associate the car parts and the car to see if any of them make sense to establish the nature of the relationship.
Yeah, no, I'm totally following. I was asking if you're saying car is the label of car is supported by parts, and
we'll go through it. If I say that so they have to be separate. So that's the first point. You have to understand that the supporting and the supported objects are separate, right? So is the car supported by its parts, right? And then car key make it easier. Is the car key supported by its parts? So it can't be, because it's a separate object. I mean, philosophically, they're 2 separate things. If one thing is supported by another thing, it's separate. So it has to be a separate object. It can't be the same object.
So it's like an inverse of the tendam, the soul floating around. It's like car is sitting on the parts in reverse.
So if they were 2 separate things, I mean, what relationship do they have? If you have 2 separate things and you take one away, the other one's still there, right? There's not a relationship. There's not that relationship there. So
can I get a little more concrete in this example?
Yeah. So
I had my engine rebuilt this winter.
Okay.
So you're saying that the engine supports the car, but the engine isn't the car.
Say it again. The car, the engine.
The engine supports the car, but that doesn't mean that the engine is the car.
I thought you were
No,
saying.
I wouldn't say it quite that way. Let me go through it. I'll go through the 4, and then we'll give however many, and then we'll give an example to try to make it clear. Okay. So let's go through them first, and then we'll come back and do an example. So he's examining the existence of a car which exists from its own side, independently of the parts. Like, is there a car that could exist independently of the parts. Just like, is there a mind that could exist independently of the parts? Okay? So when we're doing this analysis, it's like, is there a car that can exist independently of the parts? So go back to that. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're checking out. Okay? So, all right. So, let's see if we can use an example. I mean, I can use a pen because it's simpler, right? So, I mean, if you look at this cylinder, right? Okay. Don't think of it as a pen. I know it's hard. I told you not to think of it as a pen. It makes it hard. I understand. Just think, gray, silver cylinder. Okay? Just, all right? Now think pen. Put the pen label on it, right? Okay? Okay. Now turn it off and see it as a gray and silver cylinder, right? So, is the gray or is the silver the cylinder? No, neither, obviously. That's number one. Okay? It's not either of the parts. The pen is not the silver, and the pen is not the gray. That's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, so here you have it again, right? So if I take this and throw it out the window, it's not there anymore. Is there a pen? No, I just got rid of all the parts. Where's the pen? I mean, there wasn't even a pen here to start with. I mean, right? We're just starting with this raw data. We're just starting with the cylinder. There's just cylinder, silver, gray. Now I said, okay, let's get rid of those parts. Gone, right? Well, is the pen still there? There wasn't a pen to start with. You didn't even have a pen to begin with. Right? How could something be there when you didn't even have it to start with? All you had was a few bits and parts. You got rid of the bits and parts. How did all of a sudden a pen pop up when you threw away the bits and parts? Doesn't make any sense, right? That's number two. Right? So, all right. So we'll keep going. All right. So that's the idea. That's what we're doing. And then similarly with the mind, right? All right.
So the first one is called supporting, and the second one is called supporting.
Support. Is the car dependent upon its parts? Number three is does the car depend upon its parts self-existently? Right? Is the car resting upon or supported by its parts? Right? I mean, if that were the case, if the car were resting upon its parts, then it's not self-existent, by definition. If the existence of the car were depending upon the parts of the car, then it's not a self-existent thing. That's all. I mean, by definition, a self-existent object is not depending upon something. It's not supported by something. That's it. Okay. And similarly, if you flipped it and you said, let's see, let's do the concepts. I forgot which is which. This is the parts. This is the car. Right. So, are the parts supported by the car? Is there a self-existing car, which somehow the parts are attached to? Nah, it doesn't make any sense. So, okay.
So the word supported and supporting are interesting because they can be physical or they can be more in the philosophical. And in this case, are they both, or is it?
Philosophically, if something is supported and supporting, they're separate. They have to be separate objects for something to be supported and supporting.
Okay.
And because they're separate objects, two separate objects, then they're not self-existent. Sorry, they're not. Because they're two separate objects, let me see. I can't think of the right way to say it.
Maybe you're saying that because they're two separate objects. I was going to say the one can't rely on the other, but that's not good.
Well, we're talking about dependence.
Yeah.
So if something depends upon something else, right, then by definition it can't be independent. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Something can't be independent and dependent at the same time. That's what I'm trying to say. So if something is depending upon something else, obviously it's not independent.
Right.
Okay, so number 5, please say Dempe Chittam. Does the car possess its parts? So, like a person who owns their possession, right? Is there some car that's somehow the owner of the parts? And no, I mean, you do the here, like, right? Like, think you're not a human, you're not a dog or tentric deity or whatever. There's just raw data here. There's a cylinder here. Dog's going to see it as something to chew. Humans can see it as a pen. So you're neutral. You're a neutral being. You come in and you look at this thing and you say, is there a pen there which possesses the parts that comprise it? Well, there isn't a pen there for the dog in the first place. So that doesn't make any sense. They would say, is there a pen there in the first place which somehow owns the parts and collects the parts and gathers the parts into itself, and that's what makes it a pen. Right? So that's the other thing. So a self-existent thing can't have parts. So that's number 5. So let's try it again. Number 1. Look at the cylinder, right? Blue and white cylinder. Or sorry, silver and gray cylinder, right? You're just parts, right? Is the gray the pen? No. Is the silver the pen? No. That's all. Okay. There's no pen. All right, from its own side. All right. Strip away the thinking about the pen. There's nothing pen about it. All right. So number 6, please say Dupsam. Dam. Dupsam means the sum of the parts. Is the car the collection of the parts altogether? So here or this, I mean, whatever you want. Are the wheels and the door and the windshield and the top? You put all that together. Is that the car? Self-existently, please. Right? I mean, you can do it with this. Is the silver and the cylinder and the gray and the inside and the outside, is that the pen? Are all the parts together the pen? Yes or no? What do you think?
No, because it doesn't have the function of pen, even if you have all the parts necessarily.
Yeah, what pen? I mean, if you're the dog, it's not the pen, right? If you're somebody, if you're a Martian, it's not a pen. It's just raw data that you're taking in, right? So there's still something missing. Just having a collection of parts doesn't make it a pen either. Doesn't make it a car either. The car doesn't exist just by collecting together parts.
I think there's the idea of an appropriate basis to be called car, but it's still parts. And so the idea is labeled on the parts appropriately, and you could say it's functionally a car, but it's still not a self-existent car.
That's the point. See, that's the point for number 6. The point with number 6 is if all you have is a bunch of parts, there's a basis there, but you don't have a label yet.
Okay.
See? So what he's saying in step number 6 is it's sort of like the idea of science. Let's gather the right chemicals together in the beaker, and we can get a thing to appear, whatever the thing is. We can create, mix the right chemicals and life will appear, or a mind will appear, or, it's something like that. So what he's saying here is just getting the parts together doesn't get you the car, or the mind, or the pen. You still have to add the other thing, which is the identification. Or you have as you say, you have a basis there, but you still don't have the projection yet. You still don't have the conceptualization placed on that basis yet.
Right.
So this number 6 is without the projection. Yeah.
So when we talk about the basis, the self-existence, if you put all those parts together the way that they were intended to be put together, you're going to come up with that non-self-existent pen every time.
Say it again. Sorry. If you're going to put all the non-self-existent parts together,
right? So you put them all together, the way they were intended to be put together, put it together the same way every single time.
Yeah.
Are you ever going to come up with something that doesn't look like that? And
to whom?
To everybody. No labels. There's not a label on that yet. It's just the sum of the parts.
Right.
If the sum of the parts are put together and the parts are always the same, it's always going to come out looking like that. And whether I view it as a pen or whether he views it as a chew toy, because he likes to chew. Or he views it as a lock pick, because he can use it to, pick a lock to his door.
Yeah.
Isn't it still self-existent as the sum of its parts?
It's a very interesting question, because you would say there are parts there. And see, if I understand your question, the basis of your question is aren't there atoms there or metal pieces there which exist from their own side, which configured that way will always appear that way, right? That's basically the question. So, I mean, you have to take it at different levels, I think. The first point is are there atoms there? Right? Is there a clip there and a top and a, what do you call that thing? The thing in the middle,
The
cartridge. I mean, are those things there? How are they there? So, are they there? Yes and no. We have to be very careful about how we're talking about them being there or not being there. Okay? So if conventionally one has a pen, no problem. But if one analyzes what one has, there is no pen. Okay? So you can say anytime you get a cylinder which has a cartridge in the middle and serves to make a line when you move it across a smooth, flat surface, that is a pen. No problem. That's C8A, you see. That is the study of how we conceptualize everything. It's exactly what you're speaking to, which is, isn't it true that any time certain objects meet a certain criteria, we can call them that, and they can function as that for us? Yeah. How did we come up with that category? How did we come up with the notion that here's pen? Anything from this size to that size, from this diameter to that diameter, this functionality to that functionality, we're going to call it a pen. And it's going to be a pen for us, right? So on one level, we have this whole conceptual thing going on about these are the lines of what is a pen and what is not a pen. If it goes outside these definitions and lines, it's no longer a pen. Where did that come from? And how did we draw those lines, right? And those come up with those definitions, right? So that's just on a sort of on the level of mental imaging and mental identification. But then you have to address it on another level, which is the level of ripening and manifestation. Is the stuff here? Is the stuff that's here always going to manifest as a pen? I would say no, because there is no stuff that's here really. You see, it's a very profound point. We think there really is stuff here, and we think it really does have an identity and a defined nature, and it doesn't. So from a karmic perspective, what's here could be anything. What's here could be hot, what's here could be cold, what's here could be soft, what's here could be, could be hard, what's here could be, solid, liquid, or gas. Why is it manifesting as a hard cylinder to me? And is it a hard cylinder from its own side? Well, from a Buddhistic perspective, none of that's true. I'm having a perceptual event, and I'm taking in data through my senses, and my fingers are saying round, and and saying hard, and my eyes helping me see cylinder and round, and I'm assembling all of this perception into an experience and a reality. That's the point, you see. The reality that's there is not there from its own side. And the experience of the reality that I'm having doesn't have to be what it is. It could be anything. This could be, an ecstatic cylinder. Somebody could touch this and go like, whoo, I mean, because they have the karma to do that, and that's what a higher being has, that karma. It's like, every sensory input is blissful, you see. So, to them it wouldn't just be a pen. It would be a bliss-producing object, which has a secondary function of writing, They want to like make some scribbles and create some words. That's fine too. And then as they're reading the words, they're going like woo, or whatever I don't know what they do, but So it's like that. All right. So so that raises the question. What does all this have to do with our lives? Why we're analyzing emptiness, this, that, and the other way. We're talking about emptiness. We're talking about how things exist and they don't exist. At the conventional level, simple and examined reality is it for us, right? It's just like, there's walls, there's people, there's work, there's sickness, aging, and death, right? If things are self-existent, if this really is a pen from its own side, if it's never going to change into anything else, if this can only be a pen, if this will only be a pen, if it's only possible that this is a pen, right? And if it's going to wear out like anything composed, right? And this hand that holds the pen, this arm that moves the pen, this body that thinks the thoughts to write, right? If all of those things exist from their own side in that way and that way alone, then we're screwed. Because that means you're going to die, and you can't change. You can't change into a higher being. You can't change into an enlightened being. And you're doomed to be an ordinary human and die an ordinary death. Just like this is doomed to be an ordinary pen and can only be a pen. So that's why we're talking about this, and that's why it's relevant, because if this isn't a pen from its own side, and if this could be anything, the same is true of me, and the same is true of my mind and my body, right? And so I can be an angelic being, a tantric deity, a holy enlightened being. It is possible, because my existence and the way I'm experiencing myself is a perceptual event. And I can perceive myself completely differently, and my world completely differently, by changing the way in which my perception functions, which is collecting the right karma, a la collecting the right karma. To me, collecting the right karma is shorthand of saying, change the way in which my mind and perceptions function, so that my mind and perceptions function in a way to perceive every sensory input as wonderful, ultimately wonderful, right? The highest possible wonderful. So like that, right? So, emptiness creates the potential for anything to be possible. And if it's a pen from its own side, then we're in trouble. And it's like, one life to live, this bud's for you, live it up, get away with whatever you can get away with, rape, pillage, murder, and maim, but, it's not like that. So number 7 is yip. Please say yip. Yip. So it means an outline. So they have this idea of, there's an outline of this thing. So you see this outline, and somehow the outline and the shape of this is the car key, or the pen, or the car. When you see a certain shape or you see a certain outline, that's the car. The car is, the outline is the car, or the outline is the outline of the parts is the car. And by seeing the outline of the parts, you see the car. So that's the last idea. By somehow you get a certain shape, you get certain indicators, and you go car. So that's number 7. So there's a certain look to the sum of the parts. So is this outline a pen? If you look at the parts and you go, there's a certain outline and that's a pen. No, until you put the identification on it, right? All you see is a shape. All you see is an outline.
You're saying, because if you say, the outline of it, that's kind of working for me to say that's a pen, but that's only if I'm thinking self-existently the pen is out there, which is punchline the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So, where
does the word pen, how does that have anything to do with that shape and outline? Is that really what it means? Or that concept, where does it have anything to do with?
Yeah, there's so you
get there.
Yeah, you get an outline and you get a pen. When this certain outline shows up, you get a pen. Just somehow that particular outline is pen. So that's the idea. Self-existently. So you have to say self-existently. So Arya Nagarjuna is saying, if you examine the pen, the car, your mind, in these different ways, to see if it really exists out there, right? Does it exist from its own side, right? Is it the sum of its parts? Is the car the sum of its parts? No. Is it any individual part? No. Right? It doesn't own its parts. It doesn't have its parts. The car doesn't have its parts. No, it doesn't depend on its parts without the projection, just from having the collection. So, and the parts don't depend upon it. So, that's basically the idea. So, why are we talking about these things? Because Gyaltsab Je dismisses the idea that the mind is self-existent, right? And he says, use those 7 different examinations of your mind to prove to yourself that the mind is not self-existent. Look at your mind. First look at the car because it's an outer physical object, easier to understand. Do the same thing with your mind and prove to yourself that your mind is not self-existent by going through those 7 different analyses. So that's the idea. Okay? All right. So then Master Shantideva starts to discuss different proofs of emptiness, different ways of proving that emptiness is true. So, and there are countless ways to prove emptiness, but these are sort of the top 5, big 5 proofs of emptiness that we're going to go through. So please say Dorje, Semke, Tensik. So Dor means stone, Je means king or lord. Dorje is the king of stones, which is a metaphor for diamond. Sekme means a sliver, like a piece, a small, tiny piece. And Tensik means a proof. And then Ma stuck on, Sekme has a Ma in there, which is the connotation of the feminine or wisdom. So it's a proof of emptiness called the sliver of diamond. Okay? So the idea with emptiness is, so when you see emptiness directly and you come out of that experience, you see your own enlightenment. And it changes your being drastically, such that you must become enlightened, and you have the ability to become enlightened very quickly. And that's why we're here, and that's what the goal of the class is. And so we're doing these proofs because you have to hear about emptiness over and over and over again, many different ways, from a lot of different perspectives. It's by going through the proofs, it's by hearing discussions on emptiness and how things exist, how things don't exist, that one can actually start to build the basis to understand it on a deeper and more profound level, and then to be able to see it directly. The reason we have these classes is to be able to perceive ultimate reality directly. But a lot of things have to come together for that to happen. One is a lot of hours of intellectual study, like going through these proofs. But then, you've got to be meditating deeply every day, collecting heavy good karma, like serving the Dharma, teaching, and all these things have to come together to create the karmic causes to get the result, right? So when one sees emptiness, it's similar to a diamond in that it's an ultimate. It's an ultimate reality. It's a very different reality, and there are no ultimates in this reality. There is nothing which is the ultimate anything. I was going to use like a stupid TV show metaphor, but I'm not going to go there. Nothing's the tallest, nothing's the smallest, nothing's the biggest. You can't find anything in this reality which is an ultimate. So a diamond is the closest thing we come up with. It's the hardest substance, and so it's an ultimate in that regard. It's also similar to emptiness in that every piece of diamond is completely pure diamond. It's not like if you shatter a diamond that certain pieces are different than other pieces. If you shatter a diamond, every piece has the exact same chemical composition and property and quality of every other piece, right? So when they talk about a diamond here, it's in the sense that it's the closest thing that someone could talk to you about when they've seen ultimate reality. If you do experience ultimate reality, it will eventually stop every suffering of every kind that you experience. So, Sekme, when they talk about the sliver of the diamond, it's referring to the fact that every single piece of everything has its own emptiness. Like when you shatter a diamond, every piece is equivalently diamond. Similarly, every existing thing has its own emptiness. I have my emptiness, my finger, and my little pinky has its emptiness, my fingernail has its emptiness. Everything and every part of everything has its own emptiness. And they're all exactly equivalent. They're all exactly the same status. It's not like the emptiness in my fingernail and the emptiness in my pinky and the emptiness in my head somehow add up to my whole emptiness, like they're all 30% emptiness, and if I put them together, I get 100% emptiness. It's not like that. So they're all exactly equal, 100% unadulterated ultimate reality. Okay. So there are as many emptinesses in this room as there are objects in this room. Every atom in this room has its own emptiness. Right? So it's like that.
You said there weren't any atoms.
That's why they have their own emptiness.
Okay.
They aren't, because they have their own emptiness. So, and when one experiences it, it's a direct communion. It's this pure, unadulterated experience. So if you perceive emptiness, you're perceiving the exact same emptiness that an enlightened being perceives. Your first instant of perceiving emptiness is 100% equal to the emptiness that an enlightened being sees. No qualitative difference. Right? Okay, so the name of this proof of emptiness relates very importantly to one's first perception of emptiness. And Arya Nagarjuna goes through the proof, and we'll follow his proof line by line because it's a great blessing. So I'll just read it to you. It says, "Things grow neither from themselves nor from something else, nor do they grow from both, nor also without causes at all. There is no working thing at all, in any place at all, which ever grew in any way at all." So we have to go into that. So, please say Dakle.
Dakle.
Mayin.
Mayin.
So, it gets a little trickier now. It gets a little more subtle now. Arya Nagarjuna starts to talk about the emptiness of causation. Okay, we talked about the emptiness of the body. We talked about the emptiness of the mind. Now we have to talk about the emptiness of causes. Like, are causes really there from their own side? How do causes exist? Right? Why does one thing make another thing happen? Right? Like, we go to work to get money to buy food, right? What's the emptiness of going to work and getting money and using it to buy food, right? So, why do things work the way they do? Why does the sun come up? Why when you give a guy this little green piece of paper, is it recognized as something valuable where he gives you food, right? It's not, these little green pieces of paper are not self-existently valuable, right? Because they can tell you in many hyperinflationary scenarios. So, why is it that when you put a certain number of things together and you turn a little piece of metal, that the thing takes you across town? Why does it function that way? Why does it, what causes it to work, right? So Arya Nagarjuna gives us 4 choices. He says, look, there are 4 possible reasons as to why things work, right? 4 possible choices, all right? So the first possible reason of why things work and why causes work is this first one, Dakle Mayin, right? Dakle means it happens, and Mayin means they don't. And it's just things don't just happen by themselves. Nothing in the world is random. Everything has a cause that comes from something that precedes it, right? A thing can't cause itself. Like, a thing can't just pop up and cause itself, right? So, they go into this thing of like, who made thorns sharp, and why are peas round, and why are dandelions yellow, and on and on and on, right? What caused all this stuff, right? And you go out on the street and there's a car accident, and one person is killed and one person isn't. And the bus hit that side of the car and not the other side of the car, and he had a seatbelt on and she didn't. And why did that happen, right? Why did that person have the seatbelt on and that person not have the seatbelt on? Why did the bus hit that side and not that side? And why did they try to go through the red light instead of the yellow light instead of wait for it. All those sorts of things, right? So, science in our culture says we don't really have any answer. There's no explanation. It just happened. Things just happen, right? So our culture and our society is very scientific up to a point. It's kind of like we're scientific and say everything has a cause except for the things we can't explain, right? Things we can't explain, we just say, yeah, there's no cause, or it's random, or there's no answer, there's no explanation. In a way, science gives up, just says it's beyond us, or we don't know, or don't bother me, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what people would say. Leave me alone. Stop asking. I don't know. So we're very scientific till we get to certain questions, right? It's everything has a cause except for the things we can't figure out, right? So science can't figure out why we're born into a crummy life. It doesn't figure out why we're going to die. It can say, yeah, you got these cells and these things wear out and this happens and that happens, but why do we age? And, it doesn't explain everything adequately. And Arya Nagarjuna says, no thank you, I really don't like that approach. He says everything has a cause. You can't say some things have a cause and some things don't. So the first point is that things just happen, right? And he rejects it. He says, things don't just happen. Everything has a cause. Okay. So number 2, please say Shen Le Min.
Shen Le Min.
Shen means something else. Le means come from. Min is not. And so here he's saying that it's coming from something else, right? So he's saying that things cause things, right? If something is going to happen, something has come along to cause it to happen. If there is a result, there must have been some cause. Things don't just move without a cause. Results don't appear without a cause. So he said, there is a cause, there is a preceding cause, right? Like, if a nail sinks into a piece of wood, there's something which causes it, right? Which is the hammer hitting the nail and causing it to go into the wood. If the hammer moves and hits the nail, there's something causing that. It's my arm swinging the hammer, right? And if my arm is swinging the hammer, there's something causing that, which is my motivation in my mind. And if my mind thinks I want to hit the nail, then there's something causing that. And so everything has a prior cause, right? Everything has an earlier causation, right? So, but then he says it's not, right? It's not that, right? It's not that cause that you think it is. We think that if I want to go get some food, I need to get some green pieces of paper and give them to someone, and the green pieces of paper will get me food, right? Well, if you came in here with, I don't know, pesos or something, and you gave them to somebody on the corner deli, they're not going to get you food because it's not recognized. There isn't some kind of, what should we call it? What to call it? There isn't a self-existent value in the peso that it gets you food. So if you take dollars are a little better. You can take them most places. If you come with a Swiss franc, even though it's very valuable, and you try to go to the corner deli and buy a sandwich, you're not going to get a sandwich. There is no value in a Swiss franc at the corner deli, right? Just as there's no value in a $10 bill at the corner deli from its own side, right? We live our life thinking that if we go to work or do whatever and get these green pieces of paper which have self-existent value, that will be the cause for us to get food and whatever else it is that we need and want to get. And so Arya Nagarjuna is saying, it's not that way. It doesn't work that way. Those are not the causes. Okay? You can take your piece of paper to the corner deli and it won't always get you food. Why? They might be closed. You might not make it to the corner deli. So if money were truly the cause of getting food or whatever else you wanted, it would always bring its result. It would do so every time, right? And everywhere you went, it would be accepted, and you could buy things. But it's not. There's all this other stuff that goes on. There's the social convention and the recognition and all these other things which have to come together for money to work to get you something, right? Lots of other causes, and they're not the causes we think. The primary cause is karmic. If you want money to work for you, to get you something, you have to give something to someone else. So money is not the cause of getting food. Providing food to someone in the past is the cause of getting food, right? What's the proof? You can't always get food with money, right? If the money had self-existent value and self-existent capacity to buy food, you could always get it no matter what. If the money was here, the food would be here, right? Never would be a problem. Never would encounter any difficulties. Never have any issues with getting food as long as you have money, right? But we know it doesn't work that way. It's not the cause, right? So lots of people with money can't get food. The stores are closed, whatever it might be. Okay? So it's a profound concept, and to get to a Buddha paradise, you have to understand it. You have to really get it. Because we are pursuing the wrong causes. We think that if we pursue money, we'll get what we want. When in fact, money is just a karmic manifestation which serves to allow us to play out the karmic ripening. It doesn't come from the money. The money is simply a flowering and a ripening which delivers a karmic result. It's not in the money at all. It's not coming from the money at all. The money is just a conveyance, an expression of a karmic ripening, right? So, very profound and very important to understand that if we don't get that and if we don't understand it, we'll continue to suffer and we'll die. Food is not caused by having money. It's not what gets us the food. There is no self-existent money getting any self-existent food. Not only is the money lacking self-existence, the food is also lacking self-existence. Does food provide us nourishment from its own side? No. Ask David. He's only eating apples right now and berries. Sorry, David. Food is not providing nourishment from its own side. If one doesn't have the karma, food won't provide nourishment. I was just speaking to someone, there's an article in the Sunday Times or something about how the food which is grown nowadays has like infinitesimally small nutritional value compared to food which was grown 50 or 100 years ago. I don't know if you guys saw it. They compared the nutritional content of food that existed on farms, I don't know when it was, but prior to 1965, I think it was. And the food we eat now has vastly less nutritional content than the food which existed and was grown 50 years ago. Nutrition is not self-existent in food. Food is... So all of the things we pursue in our life don't exist the way we think they exist. And we spend our life chasing things that don't exist in the way that we think they do. We try to get something that we think has self-existent value, to buy something which we think has self-existent value, nutrition, satisfaction, happiness, pleasure, fulfillment, whatever it is. The pleasure and the fulfillment doesn't reside in the food or the person or anything else, and the value doesn't reside in the little pieces of paper. All of those things are simply conveyances or expressions of karma. And if we're not pursuing the karma, rather than the self-existent object, then we're living ignorantly, and we are creating the causes of suffering where we will suffer and die in this life and not become enlightened. And it's a very profound, important thing that we have to get. If I pick this up and I drink it, and it's wet, and it's pleasant, and it nourishes my body, it's not because that resides in the fluid that's in the cup. It's because I have that perceptual experience. It's because my senses and my mind and my body are functioning that way because they're forced to do so by my past karma. And if I pick this up and I put it in my mouth and it burned me and hurt me so that I couldn't taste anything for 3 days, that too would be, an experience which was a flowering and a ripening of my past karma. Nothing exists from its own side in this cup. No experience, no substance, no result, no outcome, nothing. The totality of the experience is a result of karmic ripening. And we don't live our lives where we're pursuing karma. We live our lives where we're pursuing self-existent objects. And that's why we suffer and die. If we lived our lives in a way where we were pursuing karma, karmic causes, rather than self-existent objects, we'd be in paradise in short order. And so that's unfortunate, but that's the truth, I mean, and what would the world be like if we lived that way? If we all went around saying, by pursuing virtue, I'll have everything I want. I mean, everyone would have everything they want, right? There would be no wars, there would be no strife, nobody would ever hurt anybody, right? I mean, forget even karma, it would just be a pleasant, ordinary world if everybody did that, right? Even if karma weren't true, right? Even if there's no such thing as that. Still the sweetest way to go through your life. So, but, living that way does cause you to reach a Buddha paradise. Master Shantideva calls it a blissful path to bliss, right? And it does make you a Buddha. It's the only correct view as to help others.
How long does it take?
It's a function of how well you do.
I mean, it's a nice pipe dream to say if everybody was living their life via karma, but you can't fix that because the time gap is impossible. So that's
Yeah. The proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? And so I could stand up here, sit here all day long and say yada yada yada, but until one can confirm it personally, it's not very powerful, it's not very useful. So the most important thing to do, the best thing to do, is to take something and really devote yourself to it. Take one of the perfections and devote yourself to it wholeheartedly for 6 months or a year. Really work to perfect it. Just pick one thing. Take a vow, or bodhisattva vows, or the perfection of choice effort, whatever it is. Pick something and do it wholeheartedly and see what the result is. Because once one has personal independent verification and confirmation, you don't need me to go blah blah anymore. You know for a fact what the reality of it is. And you see that if I really apply myself to this diligently in a concerted, mindful way, stuff happens. And you go like, okay, I got it, you see. But the problem is we don't. The problem is we watch TV and we get distracted and we read the Sunday Times and we run around and we think about this stuff, 2% of the day. Or if you, call it 10 or 20% of the day. More power to you. And what percentage of the time do we actually live it and implement it? And that's the heart of the matter. That's the root of the matter. Is can we do it? How much can we do it? That's the secret teachings. The more you do it, the more powerfully you do it, the faster you get results. But even if you have the most powerful methods and you don't apply them, it's not going to get you anywhere. You're not going to get anything. So Buddhism says you can become enlightened in one lifetime. Not by half-assed effort once in a while. It doesn't say that, I say that. I haven't read that in the scriptures, but that's, paraphrasing, okay?
There's no sutra on half-assed.
That's right, this the half-assed effort sutra. Yes, we should write that, right? Special American sutra, right?
Master still will.
Not put my name on that one, okay? You put your name on that one.
It'll be not biography.
Put that anonymous, okay?
That's what I've heard once.
Yeah. I can tell you from personal experience. Let's not do it that way, okay? What not to do. No, but look.
I would say you're a pretty good example of what to do, John.
Oh, well, thank you, Jeremy.
That's why we're here
Thank
to
you.
learn.
I mean, there are times, I think, from personal experience, I can say there are times in one's life where the results are very dramatic, and very powerful. And then there are times in one's life where they're not as obvious. I mean, from my personal experience, I remember when I first met the Dharma, I did a month-long long river course, and then I was like, yeah, let's go. And I helped start and run a Dharma center for a year and a half in California, right? Very powerful karma. I mean, 10 years of an amazing life. And I directly attribute it to that powerful karma, which was huge, and it ripened very quickly. It was like, wow, you know, gravy train for 10 years, 15 years, you know? Sometimes it's not so obvious, you know? My experience is that sometimes it takes a long period of concerted effort, and then the ripening comes out of the blue also, you know, later. It's like, oh, maybe you work for a number of years on something very diligently in a very concerted way, and, you know, maybe 5 years later, these amazing, you know, incredible, powerful things happen. It's 5 years later, you know. And you know, as you say, there's this timeline thing. And that's why the Galupa tradition, we focus so much on the philosophical aspect of it, because, you know, there's like these drop periods, you know. You know, we have the lean times and we have the fat times in terms of ripenings and results. And you know, during the lean times when things aren't going so well, it's important to have, in our tradition, it's important to have a strong intellectual understanding of what you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing, and how it works and why it works, and if you do this, you'll get this result, and here are all the logical reasons, and to really have buy-in intellectually, even if you're not seeing the results in front of you necessarily in the moment. I mean, there are periods of my life where I have long stretches of suffering, you know, and there are periods of my life where I have long stretches of great stuff. Or sometimes I have, like, you know, long periods of suffering punctuated by like amazing, like, mind-blowing stuff. But it's like, oh shit, that was only like for a day, you know, out of 3 months. But so, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I think the long and the short of it is one has to really sincerely and diligently apply oneself and see what happens. Because if you don't get personal verification, you just drift away, you know. Let's have a cookie break on that note.